Mills here. It's time for our weekly Bible study. Give people a couple minutes to join up here. Sorry, I got started a little bit late. Chore time ran late, which made the game time run, the family game night run late, which of course made this run late. So plus the cat apparently was eating a baby bunny rabbit over there in the grass, and the kids were all sad and grossed out and interested at the same time. So hey there, Amanda and Hannah and B. Disney. Good to see you guys. We're going to be continuing in Luke 22. Did we not have it? It feels like we haven't done it in a while. Did we not have Bible study last week? We must not have. Oh, your birthday's tomorrow, like Andrea's. Wait, is that tomorrow? It is, isn't it? Gotta check something here. I scheduled it off, didn't I? Yes. Oh yeah, it was Solly's birthday. Yeah, that is tomorrow. Man, I was not prepared for that. It must have fallen off my calendar. Hey there, Lynette. Good to see you. Give people a couple minutes to join up. Looks like a few people are here. Oh, I know, the ads. Yeah. Glad you can make it every day, Blue. The mosquitoes are out in force around our house now, which is not fun. All the kids have got giant goose eggs where they keep scratching their mosquito bites. Hey there, Dana. Good to see ya. We're going to be in Luke 22, starting in verse 43. And I don't know if we're going to continue on into the chapter or not. There's like 70-something verses in this chapter. We're going to start back into the Garden of Gethsemane, which I think is a very overlooked thing. Hey there, Jen. Oh, and hey there, Adrian. Good to see you.
Adrian?
Yeah.
Oh.
Are you eavesdropping over there? Yeah. What?
They talked to me about the dead rabbit. I didn't like it. It almost made me actually throw up.
Yeah, the dead rabbit almost made you throw up. I'm sorry. It's okay. Kitty cat's eating a bunny rabbit over there.
And it's also bloody.
It's all bloody. Yeah. What? Tell Solly to come in. Hi there, Sheena. Denisha. Whew. Things are okay. I'm glad you guys could make it. Alright, well, we're going to go ahead and start playing and following along here. And then we will let people join up while we're going. Hey there, Marie and Michelle. I didn't cue this up, so we're going to have to kind of find it together here. It's where he's in Garden of Gethsemane, so it should be easy enough to find.
Luke 22, blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them
Almost
asleep.
there.
An angel from heaven appeared to
That's
him
where
and
he
strengthened
is.
him. For me.
There we go. Alright, here we go. Gotta turn the volume down. It's gonna... Here we are.
Yet not my will, but yours be done.
An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly. and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow.
Why are you sleeping?
He asked them.
Get up and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation.
While he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him,
Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?
When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said,
Lord, should we strike with our swords?
and one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus answered,
No more of this.
and he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him,
Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, and you did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour, when darkness reigns.
Then, seizing him, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. But when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said,
This man was with him.
but he denied it.
Woman, I don't know him.
He said. A little later, someone else saw him and said,
You also are one of them.
Man, I am not.
Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted.
Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean.
Peter replied.
Man, I don't know what you're talking about.
Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him.
Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times.
And he went outside and wept bitterly. The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded,
Prophesy! Who hit you?
and they said many other insulting things to him. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them.
If you're the Christ,
They said.
tell us.
Jesus answered,
If I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I ask you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God.
They all asked.
Are you then the Son of God?
He replied.
You are right in saying I am.
Then they said,
Why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips.
Okay. Hey there, April. Hey there, Kelsey. Glad you guys can make it. And positive blessings, Carrie. Glad to see you. All right, so we're up here in the Garden of Gethsemane. I don't think we finished that. My notes said we were at 42, so. Can you say hi? Said hi, Claudia. She's pretty disturbed because the kitty cat was just eating a bunny rabbit outside.
And maybe I want to throw up and I didn't like it.
Made you want to throw up and you didn't like it?
Yeah, and Harris kept talking about the dead rabbit.
Yeah. You guys gotta be quiet, okay?
Yeah.
Alright, so we are continuing on here. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and as I was saying before, I really think that this is overlooked. Jesus is here in the garden, knowing he's about to be crucified, knowing they're about to come for him, and he's praying that it won't happen. I just always think it's important. I said that last time, but we need to let that soak in, that he didn't want to die on the cross. He would rather have not, which just shows the humanity side of it, I think, and although we don't know exactly what it was he was concerned about. either way, he didn't want to do it. And he says, all things are possible for you, Lord. Take this cup from me. And so he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like great drops of blood, or drops of blood falling to the ground. This is, again, a misnomer. We've talked about it before, that Jesus did not sweat blood. There is a medical condition where you can sweat blood, apparently, or your capillaries break or whatever, blood vessels in your face. But that's not what's happening here. It says his sweat was like drops of blood. It wasn't drops of blood. It was like drops of blood. So he had big drops of sweat because he was very distressed. And it reminded them of big drops of blood. Normally sweat wouldn't look that way, right? When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. I like that Luke mentions this. Exhausted from sorrow. This is the only gospel, I believe, that mentions that. They all say that they fell asleep because they were tired or they were sleepy or whatever. And Jesus chastises them as he does here, but they say this one says exhausted from sorrow, which is just interesting. Why are you sleeping? He said. Get up and pray that you will not fall into temptation. And I always thought that's an interesting thing to say. Why was he saying that? He knew he was about to be crucified, and he told them to get up and pray so they won't fall into temptation. They were going to be tempted. They were worried to be tempted about something, and they would give in to it. And I wonder what. I don't have the answer. I'm not going to tell you what I think it was because I have no idea. Apart from maybe, he already knew. He already had foretold that they would all turn their back on him. It doesn't say it, I believe, in Luke, but maybe it's in Matthew, that all of you will fall away from me. And Jesus says, even if everybody turns away, I will not. But they did. He prophesied they're all going to fall away. And so it's not like that was what he was worried that they were going to try to avoid by praying. I'm not sure what it was, but whatever it was, it's interesting. Something to think about. While he was still speaking, so he's in the middle of doing this. Does this one say he did it 3 times? He prayed more earnestly. Stone's throw and prayed. So this one doesn't say he prayed 3 times. At the beginning, let's see, when he went to the Mount of Olives, on reaching the place, he said to them, pray that you will not fall into temptation. There it is again. He withdrew a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down, and prayed. I always find that interesting. So he arrived there with his disciples, tells them all to pray, and then he goes away from them. And there's a couple places we see that in the scripture where it says that Jesus frequently went to solitary places to pray. And there's a couple places where it says he went to lonely places and solitary places, desolate places. So he liked to get away from people to pray. And I find that interesting. And I find myself trying that out here in Wyoming. It's pretty easy to be away from people. And so every now and then I'll just stop my car when I'm headed out to a job and there's literally no cars around for miles and miles and miles in any direction, no people or anything. And I don't know, I think there's something special about that. So if you have that opportunity to go away from people and pray, I think you should. I think it takes away some of the nerves and stuff, of how be feeling awkward of praying in public and that sort of a thing. But anyways, he said that again. Pray you will not fall into temptation. He withdraws from them. He prays some more earnestly, and then he rose back there sleeping. Get up and pray that you will not fall into temptation. So whatever it was, told him not to fall into temptation. And then the crowd comes, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them, and he approached Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus asked him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? And so I think about this. I don't know why I think about this. I feel like we've talked about the differences in the Gospels, and I might hesitate to call them contradictions, even though they are contradictions. There's differences. They can't all be correct. They're just different views of different people who saw these events, and they don't always agree to every tiny detail. The truth is still true, and all these things happen, but it's not uncommon for people's memories to be a little bit off. It actually validates the stories. If they all lined up exactly, that's what you would expect by somebody who was colluding. The fact that the stories are different, any police officer will tell you if they hear the same story from 4 people, it will be different. And anyways, in one of the other Gospels, there's 4 Gospels and four accounts of this. This one says, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? And one of the other ones that says, now Judas had arranged a sign. He says, the one I kiss is the man, arrest him. But I always thought that was very strange, because Jesus was very well known and very famous. So, I mean, how would they not know who he was? Especially if you read John, the crowd asks, who's Jesus? We're here, who are you? Jesus says, who do you want? And they say, Jesus of Nazareth. And they all fall down, and he says, I am he. And so, depending again, which gospel you're going by, they knew who Jesus was. And so I see this part here. Maybe Jesus really said that. Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? And I think I kind of read it as, you're betraying me and you're kissing me at the same time? You hypocrite snake. That's how I see it. He's kissing him and stabbing him at the same time. Whereas someone else might have heard Jesus say, are you betraying me with a kiss? As if the kiss was some sort of way he was betrayed. What's going on? You need to go to bed? Are you being a naughty girl?
No, please make me sleep.
You have to sleep. You do your chores.
She jumped down a whole basket, and now I'm sweeping it up, and she's being a jerk.
Listen, we cleaned up all the toys, me and you, remember the other night? So you have to get the baskets all clean, because we worked so hard in there the
But
other
it's
day.
hard for me to sleep.
No, you can do it. Why don't you go try the best you can, okay?
I'm sleepy.
I think you're tired. Go on, right now, okay? You can do it. Eden will help you. Yes, she will. Sorry, kid drama. You guys have that at your house? So, so they heard Jesus say, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? And maybe somebody thought that that's what he meant, that there was some sort of a signal that this kiss was somehow the betrayal and not necessarily the same way. I don't know, but I think about that a lot. The whole idea of kissing. And again, I've shared it before, I think Judas kind of gets a bad rap. Because, he said he was, he's greedy. We know he says that he wanted to put his hand into the money bag and keep it for himself. And I think we're going to see it here. No, it isn't. It isn't in right here, is it? Anyways, that Judas saw Jesus escape 1,000,000 times. They came here and tried to get him. They tried to stone him. There was times when they had him cornered on the brow of a cliff, and somehow he magically walks through everybody. Other times he just seems to disappear right before their sight, and he always escapes. And I think Judas was just trying to profit off of Jesus's uncatchability. Ooh, how much will you give me? I'll hand him over to you. I mean, you're not going to catch him, but I'll hand him over to you. And you can see that because I'm not sure if it's in Luke or it's in John, but it's not until, you remember, eventually Judas has regret, and he runs and he throws the money in there and says, I betrayed an innocent blood. But it's not until he sees Jesus is condemned. So until that point, he's like, yeah, money. And then Jesus gets condemned by the high priest and by Pilate to be crucified, and he's like, what have I done? I betrayed an innocent. That when he sees he was condemned is when he regrets. So I really think that he didn't intend to kill Jesus, but it was his greed driving him. So, anyways, something to think about. When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, Lord, should we strike with our swords? I think this is so funny too. And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus answered, no more of this, and he touched the man's ear and healed him. And we have in the other Gospels that the one that cut off the person's ear was Peter. Peter's the one that struck with his sword and cut off somebody's ear. But just a second ago, in this chapter, Jesus said, before, I told you didn't need anything, but now, if you don't have, bring all you have, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak to buy one. And Peter says, look, we have 2 swords. And he says, that's enough. Great. Peter's probably like, yes, time for some action. You guys been watching The Chosen? If you haven't watched The Chosen, you should watch The Chosen. It's available for free. You can watch it at vidangel.com. And The Chosen is amazing. Anyways, they dig Peter just so well to be this hot-headed, loose-tempered guy. And I can just totally picture him saying this. Yes, give me a sword. I'll fight for you, Jesus. And so he just told him, bring your sword. Make sure you have a sword. And then Peter starts striking out with his sword, cutting off the guy's ear. And Jesus is like, stop that, Peter. And Peter's like, what? What do you want from me? You told me I needed a sword. I just think that's just so funny. Which makes you think again, what did they need the sword for? And, what was his intention with the sword? There's not really a place you see the disciples fight with swords. So it's kind of an interesting thing that happens. They had a terrible accident on the Chosen. They did? Really? Mrs. Reeves, the lady who comes to our church and a friend of ours, she was down there for the feeding of the 5,000. She was one of the extras for the feeding of the 5,000, and she went down to Texas for them to film that. Which pretty cool. I don't know anything about this accident. That's sad. Hopefully everybody's okay. Hey there, Southern gal. One guy died. Oh my goodness. Well, I'll have to read about that a little later. So anyways, they cut off the ear. I'm sure he wasn't like, I'm going to cut your ear off. He probably was just swinging blind, and the guy dodges. They're shutting down season 3. What? Is that true? I hope that doesn't happen. So anyway, Jesus heals the guy. Imagine that. The guy comes to arrest Jesus to take him away, and he gets his ear cut off and miraculously reattached. You think that guy's still a doubter? You think he still thinks Jesus is just some rabble-rouser and needs to get punished? And that's just interesting. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders. Those are all who came to see him. The chief priest was there. It says chief priests, which is only one chief priest, right? So that's interesting. Chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come from him. So this says that there's no centurions here. It's just their people, just the Sanhedrin. Am I leading a rebellion that you've come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts and you didn't lay a hand on me. Yet this is your hour when darkness reigns. I think about that all the time. This is their hour when darkness reigns. Who's actually reigning, by the way, right now? There's places where we can see Satan's called the prince of the power of the air, ruler of this world, about to be driven out. But who really rules the world? And who always ruled the world? It's God, right? God rules the world. He's the one who's on the throne, and Jesus is going to die and ascend to the Father's right hand and take his place on his throne. And just because this is the hour when darkness reigns, it's only reigning in that Jesus is going to die. But Jesus gives up his life willingly, right? So did darkness really persecute him? And Jesus says when he was on the cross, he could call a legion of angels and they would all come down to his side. He didn't do that, though. So he gave his life up willingly. So even though darkness reigns, it's not necessarily saying darkness is really reigning. It's just saying this is a really bad situation you guys are doing. So, but his point is still valid. Remember, they questioned him. He was in the courts. He went to Jerusalem. He was at the Sanhedrin. He went to the synagogues and he was preaching. And they tried to question him and they always failed. Jesus always made them look stupid. In fact, they had to come when no crowd is around, when he wasn't teaching, when he wasn't going to make them like a fool, and then they come with swords and clubs. And Jesus is pointing out once again their hypocrisy. Then seizing him, they led him away and took him to the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. So they go to the house of the high priest. And John, it says that John is kind of leading things here, and because he was known by the high priest. And Peter follows at a distance. That's still brave Peter. He's like, I still got my sword. I'm ready, Jesus. I'm ready for you to tell me what to do. But then what ends up happening? I'm sure he gets a bad rap here. And maybe he should. Obviously, Jesus said you were going to deny me 3 times. In one of the other Gospels it says, you will deny 3 times that you know me, which sounds less condemning than you're going to deny me, right? Denying Jesus isn't quite the same as denying that you know him. And especially at the time when Jesus gave that proclamation, Peter was saying, I will never die, I'll go with you to death. And Jesus is saying that, calm it down, Peter. You're going to deny that you know me here pretty quick. But still, where are the rest of the disciples? In John, you can see that John is going inside, but Peter's here. He's the one outside here, wrestling with these people, so to speak, over accusations. So he was at least brave, right? He was brave. Even though Peter denies him, he was still brave and in going. And it says they kindled a fire in the courtyard, and they sat down together. Peter sat down with them. And a servant girl saw the seated there in the firelight, looked closely at him, and said, this man was with him. Part of me says, well, who cares if he was with him? Were they going to kill him? And if you look in the Gospel of John, it says, if you're after me, let them go. And they all flee, and they take Jesus. So it didn't seem like they were going to go after the disciples. Of course, they probably would at some point. But I still find it interesting that Peter is upset at all. Because even if he was with them, he could have been like, what of it? And probably nothing would have happened. Or maybe they would have wanted to try to kill him. Or condemn him also. I guess that's possible. But he says, this man was with him. And he says, woman, I don't know him. Do you think Peter's really in his heart denying Jesus here? He's just trying to get out of a sticky situation. He's telling a lie. He's just trying to get on by and try to help Jesus in any way he can, or at least be there. So I don't think in his heart he was actually denying him, although he did deny him, obviously. He did deny that he knew him. A little later, someone else saw him and said, you are also one of them. Man, I am not. About an hour later, another asserted, certain this fellow is with him because he is a Galilean. So in one of the other Gospels, it says that his accent gave him away. So apparently, if you were from Galilee, you had a certain accent. And it wasn't common in where they were at here. So, hey there, Veronica. And so, I don't know, it's just interesting to think about again. I wonder what would have happened if he had just said, yeah, I knew him. You want a piece of my sword? Obviously, Jesus just rebuked him for that, so that's probably not the right answer. But I'm sure he was confused, Peter replied, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Just as he was speaking at him, the rooster crowed. Here we go. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word of the Lord had spoken to him. Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. One of the Gospels says the rooster was going to crow twice. It doesn't matter if the rooster crows twice or crows once. That's not the point. But he said, before it crows, you'll disown me 3 times. And just like it happened, I find it just staggering. I try to imagine exactly the situation here. They went to the chief priest's house. Peter's outside at a bonfire. Jesus is in some place that he's able to just turn and look right at Peter. Imagine the weight of that feeling. It's just like, wow. I wonder, was he close enough to hear them talking? Did Jesus hear him denying him? I feel like if Peter had been within earshot of Jesus, he probably wouldn't have done it, right? And these people wouldn't have been talking probably just in this conversational way about Jesus had Jesus been able to hear him. But he was at least far enough away, and he knew maybe Jesus heard the rooster crowing, or maybe he's just the Son of God and knew that it had happened. But it's just something you don't think about, that Jesus was able to look at Peter and look right at him. And Peter probably felt really bad. It says he went outside and he wept bitterly. Why did Jesus want his disciples to admit that they knew him? Would Jesus want his disciples to follow him and be crucified too? No, I don't think so at all, Megan. I think what was actually going on here, if you go back and look, do we see it here? Take this cup from me. Here we go. There you go. Peter says, Lord, I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death. And so I think the issue here, Jesus gets triggered by hypocrites. You want to make Jesus mad, you be a hypocrite. That means, and a hypocrite is upokrites in the Greek. It's a Greek play term. So the word hypocrite actually comes from Greek playwrights. It means somebody who acts in a play. Just made this word famous. Oh, where did it go? Did I lose you guys? Let me know if you're still here. Give me a second to get my Bible thing back here. Oh, there we go. All right, good. Sorry about that. I lost connection for a split second there. So, yeah, Jesus doesn't like hypocrites. He would rather, if you look in Revelation even, when Jesus is talking, he says, you are neither hot nor cold. I would rather you be one or the other. But since you're lukewarm, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. So he would rather you be cold to him, because at least that would be truthful and honest. Or be, of course, the better choice is to be on fire and hot for him, which is, again, truthful and honest. But to be lukewarm, acting like you're hot sometimes and you're cold other times, that's not good. And, again, being a hypocrite is not good. He'd rather you say, Jesus, I'm a big chicken, I don't know if I can go with you, rather than say, I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death. That's the issue here, I think, Megan, that's happening. And none of the other disciples are around, or if they are, they're outside of the story and hidden in a place nobody knows. All we know for sure who are there was John and Peter. And so I don't think Jesus wanted him to go die with him. I just think he wanted him to, I think, personally, just speak truthfully. Don't go, this one here it's a little less, Peter's more braggadocious in one of the other Gospels about how he was acting, that everybody will turn away, but I will not. And he actually, that's one of the things he says. And so he was being very haughty and braggadocious about going with Jesus to death. And he doesn't. He doesn't. And what does he say, though? Jesus not only prophesies that he's going to say this. He says, Simon, Satan asked to sift you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. So Jesus was prophesying that you're going to turn, you're going to have some hard times, but you're going to turn back, and you're going to be okay. Jesus isn't saying you're going to condemn you to death. There's this idea that, denying Jesus is the mark of the beast or some such nonsense. Peter denied him 3 times, and it wasn't. Jesus just said, when you come back, make sure you strengthen your brothers, because Peter's kind of the strong one, kind of the leadery one of the group. And this is when he says, I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death. I think that's more the issue, rather than Jesus didn't want him to go die with him. In fact, you can see from John that he told him, hey, take me, leave my disciples alone. So it's better to be, again, cold. Just be honest with yourself. Don't say you love to worship God and pray and then fall asleep in church. Right? I think all of us can admit that we've read our Bible and wanted to fall asleep, / did fall asleep, because it's just straight up boring in some places. Come on. Just be honest. And that's okay. That's okay. There are places that are exciting and that are fun, but when you're reading about the genealogies or the priestly robes and how many bulls and goats and how much gold and silver and all this stuff like in Numbers and the priests and how many people there, it's just some boring stuff. So that's okay. Let's just be honest and truthful and not be a hypocrite, not be lukewarm. He was already showing Peter grace. I think so, Veronica, for sure. For sure. He was prophesied that Peter was going to betray him and prophesied that he was going to come back. Where are we at? Here we are. Anyways, the Lord turned and looked right at Peter. So that's scary. And he went outside and wept bitterly. See, he went outside. So maybe they had like a courtyard. That's the one I can think of. They didn't go in his house and build a bonfire, probably. So maybe they had like I think it does say one place there's a courtyard. So he probably had like a little little area there that was fenced off where they had the thing, and he goes outside and he cries. So okay, so the men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. So now again, I think it's important because I think the thing you read, or not important, but it's just something to think about, is that we picture Roman centurions being the ones mocking and beating Jesus. We picture some guy with his cloak on and whipping Jesus. And the Romans were actually a lot better to Jesus than his own people were. Don't forget, this is the elders, the chief priests, and the what was the other thing it said that was there? The students of the guards of the temple court. So this is the Jews. The Jews that are guarding him began mocking and beating him. There is a place where it says the centurions, they'll put a robe on him and they mock him too. So I guess they both mock him. But at least one of the centurions says, surely this man was the Son of God, or surely this was a righteous man, and they give him something to drink, and they have some mercy on him, at least. But this mocking him this is the part that makes me pretty angry. They blindfolded him and demanded, prophesy, who hit you? So they're like covering his face apparently, and then hitting him, and then teasing him like, you know everything? Oh, which one of us was the one that just hit you right now since you can't see us? Which, you think Jesus actually knew who was hitting him? I think he probably did. And they said many other insulting things to him. So they said many other insulting things to him, but this is the one they wanted to write, that Luke writes down about prophesy who hit you. So at daybreak, the council of the elders of the people and the chief priests met together, and Jesus was led before them. So they come to Jesus in the evening, and he's there all night long. I would have loved to have been there or to have seen that. What was going on? You can see at this point here, they're going to come in and say, if you're the Christ, tell us. They're probably, one of the other Gospels said that many people were bringing false testimonies against him, and false witnesses were testifying things against him. And that's probably the kind of thing that was going. According to the law in the Old Testament, it says you cannot kill somebody unless 2 or 3 witnesses agree that what they did was wrong. So even in the place where like Jezebel and King Ahaz, they take Naboth's vineyard, and he wanted his vineyard, and he says, I wouldn't give you my vineyard, and they tell, the queen writes a letter to they say, have a festival, and set 2 scoundrels next to the guy, and said, we have heard him curse God and curse the king. And so since there was 2 of them, and they both agreed in their story, they killed him. It's just like that. And of course, it was fake. That's really what it means when it says don't not to bear false witness against your neighbor. That's what it's referring to. It's not referring to just regular, little white lies. Although lying's bad, but there's places in the Bible where people say things that are not true. Just because you say something that's not true doesn't mean it's a lie. Remember, Jesus said that Lazarus is asleep. We're going to go wake him up. And they said, well, that's good if he sleeps. He'll get better. And Jesus says, no, he's dead. I was just being poetic with you. So I think we have such a, your wife asks you, do I look fat in this dress? You don't. Well, I'm a Christian. I got to say, yeah, you look fat in this dress. You don't have to. You can be nice. I think that anyways. How did I get onto that? Anyways. So at daybreak, the council of the elders of the people and the chief priests, the teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. If you're the Christ, he said, tell us. And this is one of my favorite lines. You don't see this in the other Gospels. Jesus answered, if I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I asked you, you would not answer. Man, it's just so powerful. That's exactly what happened. He said, I can tell you I was the Christ. I basically told you that already. You wouldn't believe that I am the Christ. And if I asked you a question, you guys would shut up like you always do, because I always freeze you in your tracks. I mean, who's in control here? I mean, Jesus is in control. I mean, in one of the other Gospels, it says that he was silent, said nothing. And it wasn't until this part here where it says, if you're the Christ, tell us. It says Jesus has been silent the whole time. And the guy comes and says, I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you're the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One. And so I'm adjuring you because other times they asked me, didn't say nothing. And I feel like him saying that actually got Jesus to talk. And he says, I will. And this is how he answered. He says, but from now on. And that's interesting here. Does he say later on? Later on after I ascend, or way in the end times, I'm gonna reign then? When does it Jesus say he's going to sit on the right hand of the Father and reign? He says, from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God. That's a direct quote from Psalms, where he says, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. Sitting in their culture, sitting at the right hand was very important. In fact, the right hand was more important than your left hand. The right thumb was more important than your left thumb. The right toe, big toe, was more important than all the other toes. That was very symbolic and very important in their culture. And so, sitting at the right hand, you remember James and John come to Jesus and say, do whatever we ask, Jesus. And he says, well, what do you want me to do? And he says, let one of my sons sit on your right hand and one on your left hand. And all the disciples were disgusted. They couldn't believe they would say such a thing. And he says, this is for the prepared who it was given. So sitting at the right hand is like the commanding position, the ruler position, the head person. And it's the place for the Son of God. It's the place for the Son. That's where, if you was a king, the Son would sit to the right. And he's saying here, the Son of Man, me, I'm going to be sitting from now on at the right hand of God. And in Matthew it says, sitting at the right hand and coming on the clouds of heaven from now on. So if you want to really stir your brain a little bit, think about what that means. But anyways, Jesus is basically saying, yeah, I'm God's favoritist person, and I'm his most powerful servant. I'm his son. I'm everything. And I'm the successor. That's also where the son would be. He's the one who's going to take over the kingdom. And it says that they tear his clothes. It didn't say it in this gospel, but it says, they then all asked, are you then the Son of God? He replied, you are right in saying that I am. They said, why do we have any need of more testimony? We've heard from his own lips. That was a crime worthy of death in their mind. Ironically, there's not really a verse or a law that says you can't claim to be the Son of God, ironically. But they would have seen that as definite blasphemy. And of course, it would be blasphemy if it weren't true. So he was the Son of God. And of course, he did the things that the Son of God was to do. So they could have believed him if they wanted to. At this point, they just wanted to kill him. But if you want to continue complicating this story, what did they tell Pilate? They went before Pilate and said, we have this troublemaker. We want you to go crucify him. And he says, why? What do you have to do with me? Go try him by your own law. And what do they say? But we have no right or authority to execute anyone. So they were still living under Roman occupation. They weren't the lawbringers. And so in this instance, they decided they didn't have any power to kill Jesus. But how many other times in the New Testament do we see them stone other people? In fact, they almost stoned Jesus lots of times. So they're hiding behind the authority of Rome, I think, because they wanted to be able to deny it later. They didn't want to be the one that pulled the trigger. They're going to line this all up. But just in case he really is the Son of God, I don't want to be the one to kill him. So in Jewish thinking, that was okay. It wasn't murder, for instance. It says, like in the Talmud, it wouldn't be murder if you tied somebody up and they starved to death because you didn't kill them. Yep, of course what you did caused them to starve to death, but you didn't actually kill them. They starved to death. You're not a murderer. And so they would get out on these little technicalities. And so I have no doubt that that's what they were trying to do. Well, they stoned Paul like 5 times. They did all kinds of times. They were going to stone the woman caught in adultery. They were going to stone Jesus. But here they say, oh, we don't want to kill him, so hand him over to the Romans. And then they stir up the crowd. Oh, release Barabbas. You have no king but Caesar. And so, and you can see that in Acts. Let me go to Acts here real fast and see. There we go. So this is when the apostles catch them. Look, the men you put in jail are standing in the temple courts teaching the people. It says, the apostles were brought in and made to appear before the Sanhedrin to be questioned by the high priest. This is the same guy that just condemned Jesus. We gave you strict orders not to teach in this name, he said. Yet you filled Jerusalem with your teaching and are determined to make us guilty of this man's blood. Can you believe that? They said, determined to make us guilty of this man's blood. Like, we didn't kill him. You're trying to make us guilty. You're saying this Jesus is so important, and like we killed him. I didn't kill him. The Romans killed him. They wanted to be able to deny this. And so that's why they then go to see Pilate. Otherwise, they would have just stoned him right then and there, like they did with lots of other people. So they were chickens. They were chickens. Where are we at? I think that's it. Oh, don't wait. 23 or 22? Oh, no, somehow I got way off base here. There we are. So, yes. Anyways. I think we're pretty much done and ready to go. You guys are probably all falling asleep on the East Coast. It's already so late. 11 o'clock. Well, I appreciate you guys hanging up with us anyways. What do you guys think? It's an interesting story we've all heard a million times. We know about Jesus dying on the cross, but don't allow it to be such a rote rehearsal of things we've heard so many times that we don't grasp the full implications of what this is. You know what's interesting is that hypocrisy that made Jesus, kind of triggered Jesus, is saying one thing but doing something else. And yet, one thing that Jesus loved and God loves is irony. He loves irony, which is funny. It's again kind of saying one thing. Again, your king is going to come and he's going to rule you, and he's going to be born in a trough. I mean, again, in Jewish culture, that's the most embarrassing, low thing to have happened. And there's places where Jesus says, you have taken these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. This is your good pleasure. And it's just so fun to think about the idea that there's a fine line between, it's almost related. Irony and hypocrisy are just a shade different. One is being humble in the face of the truth. A hypocrisy is denying the truth to make yourself look better. It's the opposite. It's prideful. So I just find that an interesting, juxtaposition of the two ideas. And, it's just fun to think about. Of the details I never thought about. Well, that's awesome. I like to think about new details, too. I don't want to hear about the stuff I've always heard about. I like to think of things in new angles. All right, everybody. Well, let's pray real fast. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this message. Thank you for the Gospel of Luke. Thank you that we have it and that he was so detailed. And we thank you for what transpired. And help us to be somebody who lives honestly. Even if it's cold sometimes, Lord, to just not to be a hypocrite and try to be honest and strive to be both hot and truthful. Please reveal those things in our life that maybe we are a bit hypocritical, and teach us how we can stay away from that and to be truthful. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, everybody. Well, I appreciate you. Next thing is going to be Thursday night shopping, so we will see you then. See ya.